afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Palomi introduced, we have an experienced esteemed panel. I would like to call on Mr. Sovan Mukherjee to do a quick intro about himself.
Shovan, you are on mute.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah. So welcome all. My name is Shovan Mukherjee. I am present the CISO of Fincare Small Finance Bank. I am presently serving in this organization for 2 years. Before that, I was working with Wipro Technologies, and before that, my entire career was with Indian Navy. So my present job role, I am looking after information and cyber security of the bank, and as well as all compliance related to information and cyber security.
Thank you, Sovan. I would like to invite our next panelist, Mr. Satish Kumar Dvibashi. Satish, over to you.
Hey, good afternoon all. And thanks for having me here. So myself, Satish, close to 30 years of experience. For the last decade, working in the fintech and banking domain. Previous stint was with Wipro for close to 6 years, which is a fintech organization. Recently moved to Inmobi as the CISO. So thanks for having me here, and good to share my thoughts here. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you. Thank you, Satish. And now I would like to invite our third panelist, Mr. Azim Rastogi. Over to you, Azim.
Hi, good afternoon,
Azim,
everyone.
I think you're on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Asim. I'm Head of Security and Compliance for Razorpay. About 22 years of experience, and it's a pleasure to be here and speaking to you all on RBI, cybersecurity, and those initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. As Palomi introduced, my name is Anant. I'll be the moderator of this panel today. And I have joined FireCompass as a CISO recently, and earlier to that, I was a CISO of General Small Finance Bank. So I would like to, start off with a quick overview of what we are going to talk about today. Digital payments have become a way of life for last few years, and post the demonetization and the massive pandemic of last year, it has got a massive boost, and it continues to grow by the day, with a lot of services being ported onto the digital payment platforms and also a lot of service providers. In this context, RBI in February 2021 released a master circular, and they had very clearly defined some of the requirements that the payment industry need to take to secure such transactions. With this background, I would like to start with my first point to discuss with the panelists. What is our understanding of a RBI mandate on payment sector and key elements of preparedness? I would like to go around. Sovan, you want to start?
Yeah, sure, Anand. Thanks. So fundamentally, the master it is called a master circular on digital payment, banking, and product security controls. It came on signed on 18th February and given 6 months to be complied of. So probably the date of effective will be 18th of August. So if we drill down this master circular or directives, there are 5 chapters it covers. The chapter 1 is applicability definition it covers, and then from chapter 2 I'll start the general controls. The general controls is the longest part, which contains all other parameters like application security lifecycle, management and governance of digital products, which covers what are the requirements, functional, non-functional requirements, your security requirements, and all these things. Then application security lifecycle, authentication framework, then fraud risk management, reconciliation process, customer awareness, and conflict resolution, and all these things. Then you come to chapter 3. Chapter 3 contains of your internet banking policy, security controls what we need. Then come your mobile banking security, and last chapter covers with the your payment data card security. So it's a total elaborative. From time to time, RBI has issued us different advisories, alerts, and asked the regulated entities to comply with the same. Here, in a nutshell, RBI has provided master directives to look into the entire stack of digital payment products, not only from security perspective, their performance, their monitoring, their scalability, interoperability, everything has been covered up and drilled down point by point. The timeline is 6 months for the regulated entities to comply with all these things. It's include all non-banking finance companies who are issuing credit cards to the individuals. Anand, you are mute.
My bad. So no, the question was for Satish and Azim. You both come from a payment aggregator, organizations. What are the key takeaways that you see are from this circular? Azim, Satish, any one of you?
Yeah, I would like to. Yeah, Asim, you want to go?
Yes, Satish. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Sohan spoken about the master direction. So and also it refers back to the cyber security framework, which of course RBI got it long back, which definitely is a strong foundation for the whole payment ecosystem. In fact, if you look at the cybersecurity framework, it covers the whole complete gamut of security requirements around cybersecurity resilience, including the whole cybersecurity operations, incident reporting. In fact, it's quite a comprehensive framework, which normally becomes the baseline for not only banks, even for the payment aggregators. And RBI has been quite proactive, in fact, in asking banks to ensure that these third parties, which are typically payment aggregators or service providers, to also ensure that the framework and all the controls, risk management are in place. So quite a comprehensive framework, in fact, which touches all of the areas, including, of course, the whole risk assessment and also the cyber crisis management plan, which becomes the key with the growing data breaches. And there's a lot of stress on cyber education, and also there's a stress on having a distinct cybersecurity policy apart from the standard IT policy or security policy. And also there's a lot of stress on having governance, risk management, and the resiliency requirements. So that's a means that's typically it goes all the way right from it's not only about the banks but the whole overall payment ecosystem, and quite a comprehensive one. And they time to time they kept on releasing multiple other circulars or guidelines, like the recent one also for the PPI issuers, right? The prepaid systems, the whole ecosystem. Also there have been certain guidelines around. But while the baseline remains same, but there have been additional requirements which RBI kept on emphasizing on for the whole payment aggregators and service providers.
Sure. Thanks, Satish. Azim, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so as my co-panelist mentioned, it's pretty broad in coverage and it covers multiple dimensions. So some of the dimensions which are quite striking is like policies and governance side and the vendor management, tech process coverage like authentication, authorization, vulnerability management, logging, monitoring, auditing. These are all part of the guideline, right? This framework. SDLC, pre-production, post-production, application security, both aspects are covered. Business process coverage is like grievances, fraud management, stakeholder coverage. It includes customers, general public, and employees, everybody. So that's again on the technology front. All the form factors, whether it is mobile or a web channel, both of them are covered. Product channels, whether it could be net banking, ATM, POS, card transaction. So it's in a nutshell, it's a very comprehensive guideline. It's really good to see RBI taking such a steps in today's cyber insecurity to make customer really feel secure and taking the step in the right direction. So yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Azim. So as I summarize this conversation, the coverage is very broad and it is not related just to the banks, right? It is even non-banking institutes which give the card or other services. They are also coming under the scope. And as Azim, you rightly pointed out, I think RBI has been very proactive of late in ensuring the security of these kind of channels. Thank you. So the next point that I would like to put to the team is, how do you structure your security program? So this is something new. Satish, you covered about cyber security framework, which is already done by many banks, but not so much so non-banking institutes, right? They are all still work in progress. Given the context of this master circular, how do you think the structure of the cybersecurity program should be for somebody like card aggregators or payment aggregators or to the bank?
So basically, it starts with, of course, yeah. So it starts with basically the commitment from the top, naturally, like any other standard, what it focuses on. The tone at the top is very important. Having a dedicated security organization in place, having a strategy in place, aligned back to the business objectives. So that's the stress, and of course, there's been a lot of stress also on the leadership commitment, which is a requirement from most of the standards, and also like standards like PCI DSS, which definitely complements, especially uh, the payment card industry standard is quite a comprehensive standard to ensure that the whole card environment, the whole the card data environment is secured with all the technical controls in place. So yeah, in fact, naturally, it's all about setting up a right strategy which really aligns back to the business objective and ensuring that the program is taken, in fact, well within the organization. Of course, it has to be a risk-based strategy, and so risk assessment is becoming mandatory, and of course, looking at the controls, the current state, looking at the desired state. So many organizations take, of course, different standards, whether it is ISO 27001 or PCI DSS. There's a lot of overlap or complementing controls to each other. So that's how organizations normally take this and of course implement, and it's all about maturing. So of course it starts with establishing certain system, but then as we move on, it's all about running that with efforts putting in place to ensure that it matures over a period of time.
Okay. So one, from a banking perspective, do you see any significant change with the circular coming on board?
So Anand, fairly speaking, when we gone through this entire master directives, what we find is that it has been, as already other panelists has already explained, it's a very broad-based. It's gone to a broad-based entire digital landscape of the digital channels, payment banking channels, and then it goes up to a level of the granular level control, which required to secure the ecosystem. Now, what does it mean? Fundamentally, if you look at RBI's intent from the policy framework, it clearly says that there should be a digital product and services policy. It should be the existing policy which maps all those things, or a new policy which has to be approved by the board, none less than the board. So that is the significance that has been given. The responsibility lies with the board or the top management. Now, regular risk assessment. It also says to ensure that customer data confidentiality, integrity has to be paramount, and then availability of those payment channels, payment systems should be. And to do that, what are the steps you need to take, like scalability, like interoperability, like performance monitoring. So the first time RBI comes with a quantitative analysis, this says that your operational, your information security, or your any risk factor has to be a quantitative basis, and it has to be monitored periodically. So first time it says that it should be metric based. Now, when organization like banks want to implement that, lot of things, the payment channels are implemented. That's what I told. Before that, also from 2012 onwards, RBI came out with different circulars, or if you see the RBI cyber security framework or see the advisories, lot of points has been covered. What it has done, it has combined everything and put into a master directives. So to go ahead and comply with these things, the first and foremost thing is required to do a realistic gap assessment. What the policy says, what are the controls RBI expecting to implement, and where we are. See, it speaks about adaptive authentication, two-factor authentication. Now, lots of our payment channels does have two-factor authentication. When you do mobile banking, transfer the funds or internet banking, this is there. But it says that the coverage, the gap has to be identified in terms of coverage, where we have implemented the right technology authentication framework or not. Once we have done the gap assessment, then you know that where you are and you have a definitive timeline. So it's a continuous process. So by 18th of August, you should be somewhere else. That's what the expectation of the regulator, which we don't have any choice. Now, if you see the application security life cycle, what RBI says that you do a holistic risk assessment, and this risk assessment not only from the security perspective, from the availability, from the confidentiality, from the integrity, from the performance, the system should not go down, and which we have seen in case of recent major private sector bank. RBI came down very heavily. So the expectation is set. Now, once we have done that, you should create a policy, you should put into a policy which has to be approved by the board, and it has to be reviewed periodically, not more than a year. So if there are major changes, more products you put into the pipeline or banking domain, you have to update your policy, or otherwise every year. And based on the quantitative analysis of your performance, of your security, of your risk, you have to document it and present it. Every bank's RBI previous advisories says or circular says that you should have a controlled self-risk assessment framework. Now, this thing has been categorically extended to the digital products, that your controlled self-assessment of risk should extend to the digital products periodically. You should undertake. What is the limit you have set? What are the authentication mechanism you set? Whether those can be bypassed and all these things. So minimize fraud, minimize cyber risk. Now, once you have done all these things, fundamentally, you need to have a solid reconciliation mechanism. Your fraud risk management programs should be more sound, because we have seen multiple frauds where banks are innocent customers has been the target. And among the panelists and whoever joined the meeting, everybody knows a near and dear or some of us is the victim of fraud, which has become paramount. So those parts, when see mobile banking security or internet banking security, those things has been aligned. So once you have done that thing, and if you see the most important part is written in a single line in the entire circular, it's chapter number 8. The PCI DSS entails that wherever there is a card data you are handling, it has to be PCI DSS compliant. Now, RBI has categorically written any customer data you are storing somewhere, the controls should be aligned to PCI DSS. That is the importance RBI has envisaged on the customer data. So the detailed level, the expectation is set, whether it is your card, your POS machine, or your ATM, everything has been generally set. I think that the level of ambiguity which was there prior, with this master directives, there is no ambiguity there. With relevant standard, everything they have mentioned. So now it is the time for the regulated entity to come out with a solid program and show our true progress to reduce the threat surface.
Covered it very exhaustively. Thanks, Sovan. So, Azim, in the context of what Satish and Sovan mentioned, do you think that the new age organizations, which are not bank regulated entities, but more so like, for example, your own organization, do you think there will be enough support from the management and to have a separate dedicated security program, with the CISO heading it and things like that? Do you see that as the next logical step in the financial industry?
Right, absolutely. So we already have a separate security and compliance team, which is very distinct and has only one and only one responsibility, which is security and adhering to all the applicable compliance standards across the board. So that anyway is there, and the program is of course getting strengthened day by every passing day. One of the striking changes which we are seeing in this master guidance is inclusion of public. So that is something which everybody has to augment on. So far, we have been seeing those emails from, say, HDFC or ICICI banks talking about phishing or other aspects. However, RBI direction has made it very clear for all the covered entities for this kind of customer education. Any product features which are going out has to be very clearly identified, and their risk, liabilities, and grievances, and etc. has to be communicated to the customer. So that was a good call on RBI's part to have a customer education going to the next level. Any kind of phishing email or any bundling is not allowed anymore, where customers may not expressly understand what really is being on offer and what are the associated risks. So that unbundling has been mandated by RBI. So that should help customers go to the next step in terms of understanding what those risks they are dealing with when they opt for certain payment products. So that's something is a welcome change, and every organization will have to adapt and come to the level of the banks where on those kind of educational aspects and customer awareness.
Sure, thanks. So if I were to summarize this point here, there are three takeaways, right? One is this particular circular basically strengthens the earlier circulars of cybersecurity framework, etc. One, it encompasses the customer, which was missing in the earlier circular. I would not missing more so, but not very actively mentioned the way it is mentioned here, right? And the third thing is, enhancing the security of the customer information, as someone was talking. So bringing in some stringent control like PCI DSS to secure the customer information, whereas the understanding of the industry has been PCI DSS is only card information. Now they're making this will only strengthen the overall security posture of the organization. That's the key three takeaways that I think is coming out. So go ahead, sorry.
So fundamentally, they said notwithstanding the certification requirement. Recent, lot many cyber incident has happened from not from banks, payment aggregators, gateways, and all these things. I think the concerns are more because as this data is going out to the bad hands, the amount of fraud, chances of frauds are actually multiplying into manifold. So that's the biggest concern for the regulators. So to minimize that, a sensible framework has been put into place where several bits and pieces, many things are there. As Satish told, cybersecurity framework. Cybersecurity framework also speaks about your threat modeling, your code review, your VAPT, your all these things. Here they have drilled down. From periodic, they have categorically told for payment application, the VAPT has to be annually once or after major changes. Automated VA should be annually twice. Code review should be annually once. So any periodically doesn't define anything, and then people are taking the benefits of doubt. Now they have gone up to granular level, compile everything, and they have told this is the timeline we are giving it to you. You have to mandate by that.
So thanks, Owen. I think those was actually the next point that I wanted to talk about. So since the risks for the payments are both exhaustive and unknown as well, because the new type of frauds are coming into play. So I saw a section in the circular where it spoke specifically about the mobile application security. So I would like to ask the panelists here, starting with Azim, what do you think are the controls that a mobile app should take care of? Because I see that being a major focus in that circular as well.
Right. So there are multiple controls which should be implemented on the mobile side. So, for example, the rooted device, right? That's one of the main aspects of application security on the mobile side, that it should not allow your mobile applications to go on the say rooted device, right, where the operating system has been compromised either by intention or unintentionally by some malicious actor. So that's one is very clearly called out. There are other aspects also which needs to be taken care, like although it is not called out by the name, like SSL pinning, those kind of aspects should also be there from a technology strengthening point of view. And there are other reviews of say pen testing of those applications, and those controls needs to be evaluated with the, as someone mentioned, it has to be done very regularly rather than taking advantage of open-ended statements now. And with this, actually, the security is really moving to the left, where we are talking about during the life cycle itself, application development life cycle itself, the security needs to be taken care. So that way it just goes to the next level and enhances the security on the consumer side.
All right. So thanks. So Sohan, you want to add something from a banking side? What are the steps you're trying to do to securing your mobile app or something like that?
So initially, RBI directives were mobile SIM binding has to be done where there is an UPI application. Now they have made it mandatory SIM binding, RUG device identification, your containerization, your malware analysis, your message digest. Wherever you come up with new security features or new upgrade, it should be a notification should go to the user to upgrade the same, and it should, after a time not more than 6 months, that particular version should stop working. So those controls in the mobile section, I think controls by controls, which RBI says that whenever the mobile any mobile app is connecting, the application message digest should be computed and checked against the actual one, so that any tampering is happening, the to and fro the message flowing, any authentication data which is flowing. So granular level now RBI has given in one place in nutshell that this is the requirement to secure your mobile application and mobile payment application here. So I think the ambiguity is now has been cleared and given a clear mindset to move ahead and follow the same.
Sorry, Sohan, go ahead.
Yeah, I've done it. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I've done.
Thanks, Sohan. Satish, you want to add something?
Yeah. So just adding to, I think Asim stressed upon shift left. So that's in fact very important these days, especially means basically trying to embed security at much early stage. So as we talk about security by design, right? In fact, nowadays privacy by design, all these are becoming much essential components. While no doubt all the new age payment organizations definitely use a lot of technology which is very current, like no doubt, but trying to think security right at the early stage, like predominantly like your threat modeling and all becomes very important, because the threats in the mobile are very different than the standard web version or your desktop. So definitely those has to be incorporated, and of course rest all I think my panel is spoken. So it's more about threat modeling, thinking security much at the early stage, shift left, and all that in fact puts together to ensure that the applications are secure. And again, the form factors, different versions of Android, different versions of all that is much more challenging. In fact, where organizations find it difficult to do this testing, right? Because there are so much of Android variants, and constantly the threat actors are seeing it, how they can really compromise, and that's where is the challenge. But yeah, having said that, there are of course today tools which can help you. There are mobile forms available today as part of to test applications. Yeah, continuously testing, because there are new and new threats always keep coming in. So that's a continuous process. So one is a design, and of course, while your SAST and DAST and all becomes so important, right? As a continuous process, you ensure that your application stays secure, because they're constantly being updated. Because in any mobile application, the it's like more like a today we talk of DevOps, right? Where there's a continuously organizations are providing features. So it's not that you just build once and so it's a continuous deployments happening today. So I think it's more like thinking security all the way, right, from the design to deployment and making your application secure. That's what I just wanted to add.
Sure. And thanks, Satish. So this actually leads into the a debate about the new thing that is happening. I'm just putting a point here for the panelists. So this needs a 365 degree 365 days compliance, right? So is automation plays a role in this? What do you think? Let me start with you, Satish. Automation plays a role in doing some of these checks.
Yeah, of course. See, so basically, I think I told you most of the new payment organizations who definitely leverage all the new technologies, like of course, whether it's Jenkins or containers. So definitely, automation is security trying to embed into the whole pipeline has become quite prevalent now because we are no more talking about monolithic applications and you just build once or so it's a continuous integration CI/CD in that context. Definitely, there are plenty of technologies tools available today to ensure that your security is a part and parcel of the whole CI/CD pipeline. Of course, we have Sonar Cube, we have so many other tools and solutions today. So I'm sure we all talk about because while we talk of DevSecOps or SecDevOps, right? So it's trying to embed security within the whole pipeline is definitely becoming essential. The way today, because there's not much of time given to the security teams to, it's no more a post factor analysis, it's just part and parcel of the whole CI/CD pipeline which has to be integrated, and it's happening. Definitely it's happening, but of course always there are always ways to improve and see that how effective is that in the overall pipeline.
All right, nice. So on automation in banks, something that we have resisted for long. Yes.
So fundamentally, automation is the new way of life. If I can break down from security perspective, from functional perspective, from availability perspective. So from security perspective, nowadays, what Satish, I think, has nicely explained, SIFLab, DevSecOps, and all these things where you can, without any security intervention, the entire flow can go. And when at the UAT level, when the UAT completes, you can do a BAPT or manual dust. Yeah, then only the security intervention will come. Before that, not. So that is where from the and when the application is in live, you are continuously scanning the application for any known vulnerabilities or the middleware or at the back end, the different technology stack which is using, if there is any vulnerability. Very difficult to do it manually. So automation is. And now if you see the what I say, how will you secure the data? Something you cannot measure, you cannot manage. Where your data lying? Now, looking at the database or somewhere like that, can you say my data is lying over there? Critical PIIs or card data is unencrypted here was there. So you require an automated tool which is can continuously scanning your environment and telling boss here lies your data. So you require automation over there to help you out to secure, to identify and then secure your environment. Of course, I have IBMB. These are customer facing. The tolerance for downtime is nearly zero. All of a sudden your server got hangs over, a new patch has been put into system, your server got hanged or your application got hanged, customers are not able to log in, then they are put into either Facebook or Twitter or Telegram or somewhere else. Is it the right way, proactive way that your reputation, your legal and regulatory requirement has to be met? No. Your server monitoring, your application monitoring, or probably a bot logging into the application every 30 seconds or probably every 2 minutes to checking the availability of the system. Those things cannot be done manually. The mantra is automate, automate, and automate. And when you have sufficient data and you have identify the measure, how can you automate those things will tell you a granular level, the performance, the metrics, and all these things. So you cannot quantitatively identify anything. You say 99% or 99.5% availability. How do you prove that? But if you automate the same process, the metrics and measurements, what is the downtime? Minus it from the uptime. This is my availability. You can prove it anytime because you have the metrics, you have everything. Now, what is the security parameters? If you have automated every time it is scanning, this is what the vulnerability in my environment, this is the tab I am closing. Same thing automated. Number of transaction, application failure, everything. Once you put into an automation framework, automated framework, you will get the real metrics. The machine will speak out rather than human being, which is manipulative, I believe. And with human intervention, the number of human beings required to do the same thing will be humongous. It's uncontrollable, or you cannot afford the same.
I think that's very valid. So Azim, just from your point of view, is automation something that can help in the fraud management or anything like that?
Yeah, automation is really the key in any domain. So even if we talk about, say, fraud management, there's a lot of automation which needs to go in place, and it's going in as we speak in every institution, financial fintech institution. So for example, what is the product velocity of, say, payment, right? There are multiple parameters which needs to be looked into. On the same card, how many transactions are flowing in? Is it humanly possible to for somebody to key in bunch of transaction in amount of time, right? There are multiple other threat vectors here. For example, how many requests are coming from, say, a single IP address, or maybe some other particular geographical location. So that's another threat vector. So there are a lot of threat vectors, and those threat vectors, in order to detect those and look for those fraud signals, is beyond human capacity. So humans can't look at the scale at which the transactions are flowing in, maybe at 1,000 TPS, or even more during, say, IPL or other places when people are ordering left, right, center from different Zomato, Swiggy, all over the place, right? So it's a humongous volume of data which is flowing in and out. And it's not humanly possible to look at what fraud is going on, which transaction is fraud, which is genuine. So it's really key success factor, if you ask me, for the entire cybersecurity program or the fraud management program, to have the right automation in place to pick out the right signal. It's easier said than done, but it requires certain dedication and I mean, very concentrated effort to pick out those signal, automate them correctly, and then have a right metrics to track. Right, you improve what you measure. So if you find the right metrics for the fraud, definitely we are going to improve that across the board. So that's on the fraud and automation.
So Anand, I just want to add in the fraud, because we've spoken about automation. So if you look at I come from that because 3D secure authentication, right? Especially for card not present, right? If you go back and look at the traditional 3DS 1.0 protocol, which is more OTP based, whereas I'm sure you know, right? EMVCO and they're all trying to push the 3DS 2.0 protocol, which is completely based on, it's a risk-based authentication. In fact, as Asim said, right, a lot of data points, right, looking at a lot of checks and balances, and see that whether the transaction is not fraudulent. So that's again the protocol 3DS 2.0, which and if you look at the background behind that, of course, it's all data centric and a lot of AI/ML algorithms, because every transaction there can be risk scoring, right? Every card not present transaction can be risk scored. What is the right transaction, what can be fraudulent. So I'm sure, I think it cannot be achieved without automation or without all this, thanks to data science, thanks to AI/ML algorithms, where so much of data, right, a lot of data, and that data churning should happen in milliseconds, nanoseconds, so that before the transaction passes through. So today, I think that's going to be the next thing, which is risk-based authentication, to basically to see the fraud risk, because broadly, many organizations, many banks today use these solutions, which are all based on the risk-based concepts. And there's a lot of data out there, and I think that data, right, passes through, and the risk score definitely helps to ensure that uh, is this transaction legitimate or fraudulent, and just try to stop well before it passes through.
That's a very valid point, you all made. So that actually brings into my next point. What are the key success factors? How do we go about measuring the success on, securing digital payments system? So, Sovan, you want to start?
Yeah, that's what the mantra says, something which you cannot measure, you cannot manage, or you cannot manage, you cannot measure, or you go either way around. So fundamentally, when you put across effort, so what the fruits the effort is bringing out, whether you are going up, going down, what are the business benefit it is giving, if you need to measure those things. So primarily, if you break it down, the availability part, what is my uptime? What is the amount of customer transaction happened, whether it has gone up, gone down? How many failed transactions due to technical problem? Maybe business, somebody doesn't have the valid amount in his account and he is trying to do something, that is different thing. But how many failed transactions due to what I say, my technical failure? It's a critical parameters. Then how many ways the authentication has been bypassed or a fraud has been executed, my controls has been executed. If I say that you do a e-KYC authentication or other card based authentication to open an online account, how many times it can be broken or can be bypassed? It is done. Or how many vulnerability which are pending for certain amounts of time? How many places where my data are unencrypted and lying over there? How many applications where critical logs I have failed to? If there is a fraud happened, and then when I do a audit trail analysis, I couldn't find the audit trail. The logs which are capturing is not in the right format. Or per se, if the volumes goes high, my system crashes. There is no I think capacity analysis which has been undertaken, or no horizontal scaling or vertical scaling is in place, or load sharing is in place. So I think if we break it down in terms of functional and non-functional requirement, what the benchmark we have set, now what the output we are getting. If you just put a quantitative answer, that I don't want more than 0.5% of downtime, and then you check with that. I don't want this bypass or any vulnerability in my environment. I don't want any critical customer data in unencrypted format. How many times you able to find out? I want that all logs should flow. How many times you find a fraud happened and then logs you didn't find a relevant logs? So if you can, the journey will have start. You make 5, 10 points or benchmark to measure, and then gradually as you more mature, you can put across many other parameters into the measurement criteria, and then you see what you are doing, where you are, and what you want to achieve, and present it to the top management of the board. I think that's a wonderful way to go ahead.
Thanks, Sovan. So, Azim, from your organization point of view, have you discussed or defined any success factors related to this securing digital payments?
Yeah, there are many metrics which we have defined and tracking. One of the key aspect which is really important and often overlooked is about culture, right? So strategy guru Peter Drucker says culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. So that's the key criteria where the organization has the right security culture in place to go to the next level. We can define all the strategy, tools, processes, etc., technology in place, but if the right security culture is not in place, finally all has to be executed by the people. So really, we need to focus on the putting the right security culture in place, find out the measurement criteria, what works for your security culture, right? And have a measurement around it. Certain level of course, not everything can be measured, but few things definitely around security culture can be measured and should be measured for the improvement. So that's one of the key success factor for any security program in an organization.
All right, thanks. I think culture is the key to anything, right? That's successful. So, Satish, from your point of view, what are the key success factors?
Yeah, I think both the panelists spoken about different metrics. So definitely metrics plays a very important role. And yeah, it's also not so easy to measure. Yeah, so there are, of course, again, different metrics for different teams or, like for example, typically in a cyber defense world, right? We talk of MTTD and MT, like mean time to detect and mean time to respond, which definitely plays a very important role in the cyber world today, right? Because the sooner you detect, because whatever said and done, we have great technologies, we have a SOC in place, SIM in place, but still a lot of organizations still struggle, right? To still, because we keep talking in various forums about the dwell time, still organizations, right? In fact, most of the time post breach, we come to know that, right, this breach, of course, it would have been of course, it was there for long, but then probably somewhere, right, somewhere the miss and somewhere it was not. Uh, and most of these come once post breach analysis during a forensic assessment. So typically, these are the important factors, especially measuring those things. Are we really it's not just having a SOC or having a SIM as a tick in the box, right? Just not for the sake of audit, but the constantly you measure and see that it really is improving. It's all about improving your detection capability so that you can respond, because most of the time challenges is detection, and then of course post that how do you respond. Thanks to today technology, there are a lot of ways you can really automate your SOAR, your playbooks, of course. But having said that, I think each one of you spoken about the culture, right? The risk-aware culture, the whole behavior, and how to take this. It all put together, in fact, plays a very important role. But yeah, no doubt, metrics measurement plays a very important role, and so that you know where to stand and you improve upon it. I think the metrics help you to go back and investigate and improve upon, right, year on year.
Yeah, I believe all of
Go
four
ahead,
are
sir.
from
Go
security
on.
mindset. So we missed, it's click on my mind as a customer. We missed one most critical measurement metrics, the number of customer complaint about your services and products, which should be the prime success factor or measurement metrics. I think all these things are aligned to the customer, and we should not forget that that should come prime and number one, how many complaint or compliment we have received for a particular period of time for our product.
I think that's a very valid question. In fact, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask the panelists. So since you have answered, I will not ask that same question. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, see, today when you say digital, it's no more sitting in one place. That was an IT setup that was maybe 10, 15 years back, right? So it is there on the cloud, it is there in somebody's mobile, things like that. So something like a continuous, monitoring of the various vulnerabilities, or as we call it as attack surface monitoring, is relevant to this context. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Satish?
attack.
Yeah, go ahead, Azim. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, attack surface monitoring definitely is one of the prime initiators of security. If you are having your organization having a externally visible surface area on a continuous basis is a good starting point. Because with our many API businesses proliferating, very new startups and other banks are going with all the API based model, there's a surface area which is coming up which might be staying unknown. And with all the automations, if automation goes wrong because of some bug or whatever else, then it might open up very big surface area or loopholes and vulnerabilities which were not possible earlier, right? In a data center model, where if you have a good firewall, you are pretty much protected, and you don't need to worry about it. But now it's not just firewall; it's about your database services, your say in cloud, AWS S3 buckets, or maybe multiple services going on where one wrong click can take all your customer data and everything from private to public with just one click. The firewall will stay where it was. It will be still a good firewall, but your data is no more within your control. So with those things, externally visible surface area is really the key to have that kind of visibility. What is going on in your say production environment or any other the key assets, information security assets you might have, and have that as a starting point to work off of that list, and see how to reduce that surface area and make sure to stay secure.
All right, I think that's a very comprehensive, thing that you gave us, Azim. I think that's the new way of working on digital, right? Every organization on a digital transformation thing. So the next sub question to that is, there needs to be a VAPT. That's what the mandate says. Now, putting in some kind of an automated red teaming or some solution like that, do you think it will ease at least the burden, or at least give the comfort to the CISOs to say that these controls are either working, not working, partially working, whatever may be the case? So, anyone?
Fundamentally, we need to understand that what is the difference between a traditional VAPT and an external PT or external red teaming. Traditional BFPT always inside out. How am I from inside? I'm always looking into that. But it's more like a political leader. How am I looking from outside? Is more relevant. So I think cyber security is. I always tell that there is nothing absolute, nothing can be unhackable. Only thing is that it's if a few friends going through a jungle and then you have been chased by a tiger or a bear. So your target is to always be ahead of your friend. So you should not be the last person. If you see the real attack surface, every day thousands of scannings are happening on your application stack, on your external IPs. So fundamentally, through VAPT, we don't know how am I looking from outside, whether any RDP ports are open, whether any port 445 or 139 are, which are very well required for your printer, for your RPC port, for your Active Directory is required, but those are open. Those are the actually entry point for your ransomware. So fundamentally, once we are going through those things, or your some SQL ports are by default open from external, which is not required. So fundamentally, how do you find out? That cannot be come through an internal VAPT application or infrastructure. So you need to understand what is my posture from externally. If somebody is scanning, what are the vulnerabilities getting? And before he finds out something, if you go ahead and close those things in your application stack, or somewhere your directory in one application, in one server, the directory listing is enabled. Dead case, the entire database or entire stack is gone. So how do you find out? It's a continuous basis. Some scanning is happening from externally, and you're checking your posture that there are no known vulnerabilities. Now, if somebody has to penetrate you, he required a considerable amount of resources and effort required. You should not be a soft target. So first, we need to ensure that as a CISO for the organization, and for that, I believe that external scanning, red teaming, or penetration testing is very much required nowadays.
So, Satish, you want to add anything to what Azim and Sovan said?
Yeah, I think mostly they covered, but yeah, it's definitely important. Outside inside view is very important. In fact, many large enterprises, as part of their, if you look at third-party risk management also, in fact, many banks, if you look at large banks, they also subscribe to something like BitSight or security scorecard, right, to see the score of these vendors or partners, right, and because that also gives a lot of whatever publicly visible, right, information outside, because as someone said, there's a lot of scanning, a lot of information is out there in public domain. So these scores also, in fact, help to ensure that organizations proactively take this and how they can improve the score, so that the overall posture definitely remains better. And yeah, it's a continuous exercise. It's not that your score can dip also, like based on certain parameters, because it's a very dynamic world. We constantly are spinning off new machines, new IPs, new domains. There's so much of thing out there in the internet world, and definitely having that visibility is very important. Now, whether you want to call it as red teaming or some sort of proactive way to see what's the outside inside view is absolutely becoming very important in a cyber world today.
All right. Thanks, Satish. I think we have come almost to the close of the time that was given, but I think it was a very exhaustive discussion on the circular, and also what are the nuances that we need to take as a regulated entity, right? Now, one last question though. I know we can never talk to the regulator, but from your point of view, is there something that we can give as a feedback if a regulator was willing to take that?
Yeah, CISO should not be owner of all the circulars, advisories, and all these things.
Okay, that's coming from the bank. What about the Razor Pay, Azim, Satish? You guys are still not under the regulator, wind, but is there something that you guys can give?
Not directly exposed to regulators, but still, I think they are doing a good job. I'm sure they'll continue doing that, and yeah.
Right. So, any feedback to RBI, if at all we could share that?
Bring them quickly under regulator.
Good.
Misery seeking company.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know if it's a good
I'm
wish
sorry.
or something.
I mean, it's really
Okay.
good to have all the payment players into the regulatory ambit. So that way, it helps further our customer security, because customer is paramount. So that's good
Right.
that we bring that and bring the data privacy bill forward. So that should really help.
All right. So thank you. There are no questions from the audience, so I think since we have come to the end of the time, we can close it. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all, three of you, and it was a wonderful discussion, and I felt happy moderating it, and I think you also gave you a lot of insight to the audience, and thank you very much. Follow me, over to you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today, and I think this was a great session, very insightful, very interesting, and I'm sure all our community members are going to greatly benefit from the discussion that we had today. So now we will upload our learnings from today's session on the CISO platform, and a copy will be made to you as well. So with that, I would just like to say thank you everyone once again, and can close the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Satish.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.